Lost Souls Ultra 2024, September 6th today, 7:45 a.m. We're on the way.
Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ian here. Hope you're doing really well. It's been a couple weeks since I posted a video because I just ran the Lost Souls 100K distance in Lethbridge, Alberta, and I wanted to give you a race recap. Definitely some lessons learned, definitely a tough day at the office, so I wanted to give you a breakdown of how the day shook out. This was my second attempt at running the Lost Souls Ultra in Lethbridge, and spoiler alert, I'm not happy. I was dished out another DNF. So here's the scoop. Me and about 55% of the field in the 100K event DNF'd, 67% of the 100 milers DNF'd. And that was one of the primary reasons was the heat. The hottest day Lethbridge had all year we had on that race weekend. 33 degrees was the temperature in Lethbridge, and in some of the coulees, the resonated heat was around 41 plus degrees in certain points of the race. So heat management was the primary concern for many runners, and it took a lot of people out. For me, what happened was the cutoff times were really tough. I didn't necessarily quit and DNF, but I missed the second cutoff. There was a 10-hour cutoff at 6:30 in the evening. You start at 8:30. There's a 6:30 cutoff. They actually extended it a half hour this year because of the heat. And then there's another cutoff at 1 in the morning at leg 9. And I missed getting to that in time. So my day was done. But let me tell you about the course and the race. If you're interested in the Lost Soul Ultra, or if you've done it and you know it, it's a 50-kilometer loop that you do twice. So if you're doing the 100K distance, there's 5 legs that you do twice. If you're running the 100 miler, you end up doing that 3 times, plus they tag on an additional 10, 11 kilometers at the beginning, and then you do the 3 loops as well on the same course. One of the things I like about having those loop courses is that it gets you lots of aid stations. There's a lot of accessibility for your crew. The longest leg is 16 kilometers. Otherwise, it's 9 kilometers, 8 kilometers, 9 kilometers, then 16, and then another 8. And there's a couple points where you come back to the same aid station, so your crew doesn't have to move around a lot, which is really nice. What I don't like about the loops where you go back again on the same is I've always had a struggle mentally around that, especially when you go through and there's some really tough climbs in there. On the first time, you keep reminding yourself, my goodness, I gotta come back in the middle of the night and do this again. So mentally, that's a real tough one. It kind of psyched me out a little bit last year and again this year, knowing that some of those climbs are tough. There's about 8,000 feet of elevation on the course. There's 32 significant climbs in the 100K. So it's definitely a lot of climbing. There's not a lot of long gradual hills. It's mostly straight up, straight down, some really steep climbs. And for me, that was something that was really tough. On the course, when it was so hot, I found really the climbing for me was tough. I think that was a training weakness that I'm going to address for next time. But I found like my heart rate was just going through the roof when I was doing the climb. So it took me a lot longer to get up the hills than I wanted to, which slowed me down, which ultimately led to my DNF not being able to make the time cut. So that was a big one. But again, I really enjoyed the fact that you do have lots of aid along the way. As I was sort of dealing with the heat, the biggest things I focused on was my nutrition strategy. I went out with the precision hydration in my flasks, bunch in the back. I was carrying lots of fluids. On the 16-kilometer leg 4, there's actually 2 water drops. So you've got lots of chance to refill your bottles if you need it, which was definitely welcomed. I know a lot of us runners, when we got to those water drops, refilled, bathed ourselves in the water that was out there for us and kept going. But there is lots of chances to hit your aid stations and fuel up. The hydration for me was fine. One of the things I found too is that my stomach was good the whole time. This was the first time racing with the precision hydration. I did a video not that long ago about that. And so if you're interested in learning about that product and those electrolytes and the gels that they have, check it out. But for me, I found that worked pretty good. I was on top of my nutrition all day long. I think the heat just really got to me. So that was a big one. Again, this was my second attempt, so super disappointed that the day didn't come together. It's gonna mean that I'm going back again next fall to make that wrong right. And so that was a big one. For heat management, some of the things that I worked on was having basically ice jammed everywhere. The aid stations at this particular event, the Lost Soul, are awesome. The people are awesome. They're fully stacked. They had ice for fluids, so there's ice cold water available for the runners to keep your flask nice and cold. Nothing worse than drinking warm electrolytes. And lots of ice they had there just for your body to put in your hat, to throw in your sleeves. I had a bandana around it. I stuck a bunch in a sponge under my hat. So definitely felt like there was lots of opportunity to utilize those resources. And again, the aid stations are super stocked, which was awesome. So that's always one of the things that I've heard time and time again about the Lost Soul Ultra, is that the course is organized really well. The people are great, the volunteers are great, and the aid stations are top drawer. So I would definitely tell you that as well. Just want to share a couple lessons that I learned this time around. And one of the things that I find is, as I've sort of been getting into the ultra distance, more trails, transitioning from road to trails has been a steep learning curve for me. And there's this sort of long learning curve. Each time I run one of these events, I learn a little bit more. I take away one little thing, or there's a couple lessons that I can apply to the next one. And of course, every race, the variables sometimes change, but still trying to learn and grow each time that I do something. So a few things. Number one was my nutrition. I had a really clear nutrition strategy as far as how much I was going to drink each loop, when I was going to take gels. I was using the aid stations to supplement by feel, so like some food like chips, beef jerky, soup, things like that when I felt like it, because I was getting enough calories through my gels and electrolyte drinks. But what I found was, and I found this a couple of times now, is after I've been drinking electrolytes and like the Tailwind or this precision hydration for like 12, 15 hours, I get to a point where I'm just sick of the sweetness and I want to switch. And so I think that was one of the lessons I took away this time, was probably going to switch to, when I get to that stage, switch to water and substitute the calories. I'm lucky enough that I can eat solid foods, so rely a little bit more on solid foods at the aid stations, and then water opposed to the electrolyte drinks, because I got to the point like midnight and I was just ready to puke from drinking that. I couldn't take anymore because I was done drinking that. So that was one of the things I think I'm going to try next time, practice a little bit more on my long runs to see if that works. But that was definitely a lesson. The second thing I think was a lesson for me too was to not get so far ahead of myself. And what I mean by that is, because there's those cutoff times and you know doing those loops, you kind of know what's coming up. Sometimes I find that I can get so far ahead of myself, where especially when you get into those low moments of a race where life sucks, you just are ready to die, you just feel like garbage, and you start to think, how am I ever going to finish this? I've got so much left, there's no way I'm going to make that cutoff time. I found myself in a few points where I got really far ahead of myself versus just staying in the moment, staying present, getting through the next leg, getting to the next aid station, sort of chopping it down a little bit more. I had that in my mind going in, but I definitely found that I allowed myself to kind of get too far ahead of myself and sort of planning, okay, if I can finish in this time, then I'm gonna get to this one. So definitely you need to have that plan in your mind, but I found myself getting a little too far ahead of myself. And then the last lesson for me this time was definitely for the Lost Soul Ultra, and for me was more hill work is definitely required. Again, going up those steep hills for me, I struggled a lot, especially because of the heat. But I just need some more time climbing. Where I run in Airdrie, my hometown, a lot of road running and not a lot of elevation here. So I'm going to definitely look for more opportunities to find some climbing, both up and down, because I found that I'm definitely feeling more and more confident on the trails as I do more of these. I can definitely get stronger on the climbs, build some strength for next time, and even going down the hills, being a little bit more aggressive at attacking the trails. I used my Lecky poles this time. The first time I tried the Lost Soul Ultra, I didn't use poles. This time I did. Felt super confident with them. Love the poles. They work super easy. I do have a review I did on the Lecky poles before on the channel if you want to check those out too. But this is sort of my first time using them in a full-on race. They work super well. I used the Solomon pack, and I had the quiver where I had the poles in. Super easy to get them in and out. I love them. They're really great. Even when you sort of get tired of carrying poles, there are a couple of legs where you don't have a lot of time between hills. You can just you don't really have to hold them. You can just drag them, or you can just sort of let them, you know, down and they're still attached to you. So I really like the poles. Found a lot of good lessons there, but just more time on the trails and sort of getting a little bit more confident in the up and downs to be a little bit more efficient, especially in a race like Lost Soul. You have to hit a 21-hour cutoff time in the 100K. And for me, I did make it this year, of course, so that was the big challenge. And so those are the lessons I learned. If you're someone that's raced this before, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment of your experience if you raced it this year. How did you find it? I know there was a lot of us out there suffering together, and this race seems to be one where there's a lot of people go back and do it year after year after year. And I know I'm not alone in sort of having a bit of a bone to pick with the course and go back and make it right. I met some great people on the course. Or if you're thinking about it and have questions, by all means, drop those down as well. Last thing I'll say is if you're interested in following my journey to ultramarathoning, I've got a massive race coming up next year that I'm going to tell you about on the channel soon. I try to post every single week, just kind of give you my experience as someone that's learning and training and growing. I'm not an elite athlete. I'm just a regular guy trying to really push myself to the limits. And so this is what this channel is all about. If you're interested, I'd love it if you'd like the video, subscribe, share, do all the things you need to do to stay on track with me. Comment, and let's chat together and grow together. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you guys on the next one.